Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Mining from Space, How Satellite Imagery Improves Decision Making. My name is Sabrina, and I'm a Product Marketing Manager at Up42. I will be your host for today. Before we begin, I want to remind you that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So please use the dedicated questions tab to submit your questions, any inquiries you may have. We'll aim to address most questions live during the webinar, but we'll also follow up after the webinar with a recording and also answer the questions that we weren't able to cover during the live session. So now let's introduce our speakers. We have Chloe Kerlau joining us today. She's an operational marketing manager from Airbus. And we also have Brad Pendergast. He's our key account manager at Up42. Chloe will be sharing with you today insights about Airbus data and its applications throughout the whole mining lifecycle. And Brian will then demonstrate how to access Airbus data directly through the Up42 platform. He will also include a live demo in his presentation. So yeah, stay tuned. And I think with this, Chloe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sabrina. Hello, everyone. So I will share my presentation. There we go. So I'm going to talk about how the Airbus constellation can support mining activities throughout the whole mining lifecycle. So I'll first go a bit through our constellation and our solutions at Airbus. And then I will just go through some use cases and some imagery, because images always speak louder than words. So to begin with, when we talk about our Airbus Earth observation constellation, what is it? So it's made of an optical constellation and a radar constellation. So we've got 9 optical and SAR satellites that have a wide range of resolutions, from Pleiad Neo, which is the highest resolution, to Pleiad and Spot. And then we've got also a radar constellation, which is a very valuable asset to assess mining activities. And it's 3 satellites that work together and that have a wide range of resolution as well. And then I've put our feature assets to show that we're always working towards better resolutions. So our portfolio is not only made of our satellite imagery, we've also got reference layers, 3D elevation models, which are very interesting as well for surveillance of mining activities and of remote sites. Then we've also got some analytics like change detection, and we can produce some maps. So to dive into this little toolbox that you can have thanks to our constellation, I'm going to start by detailing our optical and SAR imagery, then our reference layers in 3D portfolio, and finish with a quick word on analytics. So here's the different resolution that we have depending on our sensors. So as you can see, it's a wide range of resolutions that goes from Spot that you can see on the left, which is a 1.5 meter resolution. So it's great to cover wide areas and remote areas. It can map very quickly a wide area, and then you go into more resolution. Obviously, the swath of a higher resolution imagery is going to be smaller. So, for example, when you go into Pleiad Neo or Pleiad Neo HD15, it's for to pinpoint exact details. So as you can see, that's the same area but with different resolutions. So you can see much clearer with Pleiad Neo. But obviously, if you want the wider area, it's very interesting to have Spot. And we've got a full base map of that covers the whole world with Spot. So I'm going to give you some examples, because obviously it's always easier to see what it's like in images. So as you can see, this is a mine in Brazil that was taken by Spot. So it's got the whole area, it's quite wide. And then when you go more into the details with Pleiad, for example, that's a mine in Germany, you can see more layers of the site. And then you can go into very small details with Pleiad Neo, which can be very useful to monitor installations and construction or infrastructure as well. Whereas with Spot and Pleiad, you'll have a wider view of the site. So as you can see, there's a lot of details with Pleiad Neo. So that's better for needs of infrastructure or construction monitoring, for example. And there we've got a couple images from Saudi Arabia. So that was it for the different resolutions that we have in our constellation. And now I'm going to go into our 3D portfolio, because that's quite interesting as well if you need mapping or elevation models. So our 3D portfolio is made of digital terrain models and digital surface models. And then we can also generate what we call 3D mesh, which is a realistic view of a site that is made with a combination of radar and optical imagery, whereas digital terrain models and surface models are produced from radar data. And just to give you a little information on the resolutions that we have in terms of elevation models, we've got 5-meter resolution, 1-meter resolution, and 0.5 meter resolution. The one that we see is the most interesting for mining activities is usually the 5-meter resolution. So I'm giving you a couple examples there of the Gasweiler mine in Germany and of a mine in Australia as well. So you can see what it looks like. We code elevation with a color code that goes from the greens into the reds. And so the DSM-5, which is 5-meter resolution, is the one that we see is used the most for mining activities. We've got global coverage of the surface of the Earth for this model, so it's available for anywhere, but obviously you can always it can always be tailored to your needs as well. And for the global coverage, we've got acquisitions from 2017 to 2021. We're also updating our acquisitions to have a fresher model, and when it's on requirement, it can always be fresher, obviously. And then a quick word on our analytics. So we can provide you with imagery for change detection. We can provide you with INSAR mapping, which is made with our radar imagery. And then we can provide you with imagery that's dedicated to reforestation studies, for example, because of our decades of experience in deforestation and reforestation with programs such as Starlink, which is a deforestation surveillance program. So how do you use satellite imagery now? What's the added value of it for mining companies and in the whole project lifecycle of a mine? So if you start with feasibility and exploration phases of a project lifecycle, you can use elevation models. So that's what comes as very handy for understanding the terrain when it comes to geological, structural mapping, and when you want to analyze the terrain in like a pre-construction phase, pre-exploitation phase. And then it also helps for baseline environmental assessments. It provides you with archive, and then you can have access to a reference of a pre-disturbed state of your mining site. In a construction and development phase, you can do construction monitoring, infrastructure mapping, as I was saying, with a very high resolution imagery, like Pleiad Neo, for example, that gives you a lot of detail. You can also use land use classification, thanks to analytics, to map out the whole terrain. And then again, you can do surface modeling with elevation models, and it's especially with the revisits of our satellites, it can come in as very handy to follow the whole evolution of your development process and of your mining area. When you dive into operations, something that's very valuable for mining companies is to study ground movement and slope stability with interferometric data. So interferometric data maps are produced with our radar imagery. So with our SAR data, we can monitor ground deformation, and I'll give you a couple of use cases afterwards. But for example, we've done some monitoring of the Kiruna mine because of the ground deformation that's caused them to move the city in Kiruna. So we can do that, and the revisits of our satellites allow for regular monitoring and regular producing of interferometric data. And then again, you can have activities and infrastructure monitoring with the constellation and with satellite imagery and optical imagery that can come as a complement to radar data. And then when it comes to decommissioning a mining site and studying reforestation, for example, or the after monitoring a site after decommissioning, it's easy to monitor remote areas thanks to satellite imagery. Again, you can have access to archive, or you can have tailored imagery for your needs. You can track, if it's in a vegetated area, you can track vegetation growth and reforestation. And again, you can use surface monitoring and elevation models to study ground deformation and to keep on having a precise view of what the site looks like. Now, I'll dive into a couple use cases so you can see the advantages of using radar or optical imagery. So we've got a mine in Sweden, in Lapland, that has benefited from interferometric data. So they were studying ground deformation it's a large iron ore mine. They were investigating the impact of mining activity on the stability of ground surface. So there's been a collection of 86 radar images from March to October 2022. And they've established interferometric maps where they could see the deformation of the ground with possible confirmed cracks, and that provided insight into displacement of the ground and as well as displacement rate, since there was a regular follow-up during that whole time period. So that's for interferometric data. And then you can also use algorithms of change detection, for example, over elevation models. So that's the example of a mining site in Australia that's collected data of digital surface models from 2010 all the way throughout a decade to 2021. And then they've used change detection algorithms to see how the site, to monitor how the site has evolved. And just, well, as you can see, we have a difference already in the two digital surface models. So I'll go back on the previous one so you can focus on the picture if you want. And just overlaying the two surface models, we can see already how the terrain has evolved. And then again, because of the precision of data, you can, of course, dive into this evolution and then combine it with radar imagery, with optical imagery, to make sure that you have very specific insights, especially if you want insights on a certain area. And that was very useful for them because it was a very remote location of difficult access. So especially once you've decommissioned your site, it's easier to just task a satellite than to go there, and it's less costly. And then you also have access to archive imagery over the past. So that's also coming in as quite handy. So I've gone through most of our portfolio. I've gone through our constellation and the way you can have touch points for satellite imagery throughout your whole project lifecycle. If you've got any more questions, just pop them in the chat, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. And then we'll hand over to Brian.
Great. Thank you so much, Chloe. That was very interesting. I just want to make sure I'm sharing the PDF. Oh, Dobrina's done that for me, I think. Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes getting into how we, Up42, that is, enables you to get access to this data that Chloe was just showing us. So I'll start by giving sort of an overview of sort of the pain points we've learned about in the industry, in mining specifically, but also just generally across large organizations, and what Up42 does to resolve that. And then I'll give a sort of a high-level overview of the Up42 ecosystem. And then I'll get into I'll do a live demo of some of the features that I'm going to talk about that are part of the ecosystem and how we give access to data and what they actually look like, so that you might become more familiar with it and if you already have an account, that you can access it yourself. And then finally, I will talk about some value add features specifically designed with mining companies in mind, that hopefully make accessing data more easier for your organization. Yeah, so let me just get right into it then. So this first slide is an overview of the way we sort of see the industry now. A large mining company, but I also want to reiterate that this is also applies for small mining companies potentially as well. But with large global organizations that are operating across many different jurisdictions, they might have teams in closure and mine operation, in exploration, just like the different life cycles that Chloe highlighted previously. This creates a lot of fragmentation in the organization. And so it can create a lot of redundancies. And then add that multiplier to the amount of data sets available, not just at Airbus. You see a growing constellation of really high quality data from Airbus, but there's also more and more data available across the industry. And so managing access to this data and consolidating it is a huge undertaking that's creating quite a big tangled mess potentially for large organizations that have different remote sensing expertise from many different jurisdictions. And then once the data is actually accessed, where do they store it and how do they access it going forward? So you might have, let's say, a mine exploration experts operating in Australia, and they've purchased some data in an early stage of the life cycle of the mine. And then over a few years later, they might have a mine closure specialist working on it, or let's say a mine site operations specialist. And they might not be aware of the data that's already been purchased by the mine exploration expertise. So having sort of a data lake centralized where access is visible, it's queryable. I'll talk more about this later, but this is sort of the way we see a lot of the redundancies and issues that large organizations are facing with remote sensing data in general. And then of course, there's a huge variety of remote sensing specific and geospatial specific software. Everyone has their preferences, whether it's ArcGIS, QGIS. There's probably NV users in the call as well as Bentley. Where people are using the data and accessing it, we also try and solve for this and make it a little bit more easy to ingest and create insights and analysis using the data that we've provided. So to give sort of a untangled view of what that previous slide looks like, this is sort of what we set out to achieve, is have one centralized platform so that all users across an organization can manage things like compliance, which is a big one. So if you have, users in several different jurisdictions going through the same compliance process over and over again with one provider, that can create a lot of overhead and wasted hours and redundancy. So saving time there, but also saving time on not wasting money on extra data. But then also there's, risk involved if you're not having proper legal review and centralized kind of understanding of what these somewhat complicated licensing agreements with providers can mean and impact your business, especially if you're sharing data properly across your organization. You want to have proper oversight on that. So that's what Up42 also sets out to do. And then a lot of the effort that we've been focused on recently has also been aligning how we allow users to manage their teams, especially budget-wise and money-wise, with how they already manage their teams internally. So like Chloe touched on, the organizations we've been speaking to can be very fragmented. I keep saying that word, but it is true that you have different actors and stakeholders that may not interface with each other that often. And internally at your organization, they might not be accessing the same pools of money or project budgets. So we wanted to enable customers to manage that on their own. So that's kind of what I'll get into a little bit more today. I'll get a bit deeper into these topics. Like you will see here, this is a sort of a high-level framework of what the Up42 ecosystem looks like. So for now, we'll just focus on this top row. So starting with catalog. Catalog is exactly what it sounds like. It's a library, an archive of data that's centralized on the Up42 platform. So we have Airbus, of course, but also Vantor, Planet, Black Sky, Hexagon, Vexel, a ton of different industry-leading remote sensing data sets available on the platform so that you can query easily, see high resolution or previews in the catalog and make the best decision for data that suits your needs, whether you might need an image from October of last year over a mine site. Rather than going to 6 different providers' websites, you can search all of them at once and figure out which data set fits your needs, both from a cost perspective, but also temporal resolution, these types of attributes that are important for analysis. If the data doesn't exist in the catalog or you need data in the future, that's where tasking comes in hand. So tasking, you can direct a satellite to collect data for you. So we do a lot of this at Up42. We have a lot of automations and our tasking platforms really built out to manage tasking projects really efficiently for teams and make it easy. Tasking is a complicated process of hiring a satellite. Every satellite operator has different rules for ordering data, commercial agreements. So understanding that and optimizing for it and making sure you're making the right decision is really where we try and guide customers towards, and our customer success team especially does a fantastic job at making sure we're trusted advisors to our satellite tasking customers. So we'll talk a little bit more, show directly what that looks like, some of the features in managing tasking projects. And then data management's another big unique selling feature of Up42. Standardized data is just like standardizing compliance, like I was talking about earlier, and better accessing multiple different data sets in one place. Interoperability of data is really important if you want to make the most of all of the growing number of data sets that are available in the market. So you want to, a successful data strategy is one that's agnostic to the type of sensor that you're using. Of course, a lot of companies might prefer data from Airbus because it has very high quality data, but there's also sometimes cheaper data or free data, even for that matter, that might suit your needs in the meantime. So that's where, being able to ingest data from different suppliers, if it's stored in the same way and queryable, our data management does a really good job at allowing users to ingest data from many different sources and store it for you, make it so that you can stream it directly into your GIS environment without having to download it as well. You can create WFTS tiles. I'll also get into that a little bit later and show you what that looks like. And then finally, there's also processing capabilities on the platform as well. So a lot of people in the call might be experts in remote sensing and have more of a scientific background, and they might want raw pixels because they want to manipulate them in their own way. But we do have users that might want pan sharpening done or color balancing or upsampling done on imagery to make it a little bit sharper and cleaner for a base map or for digitizing a boundary of a mine site or a tailings pond or a dam. So we do have some basic processing available on the platform to enhance the imagery and make it even better than it already is. So with that said, I'm going to get into showing you what this catalog tasking and data management looks like. I'm going to share my screen, and bear with me, please. Demoing is always a bit of a gamble, but this is what the landing page of the Up42 website looks like. So you are now on the console, as we call it. So if I exit this, is it gonna, am I still in the meeting? Yes. Oh shoot, it's still, just gonna go down here. So this is the console. So on the console, you'll see there's a link to take you to the catalog to search the library of all of our API connections to our provider network, tasking to dictate or to ask a satellite to collect data for you, and then what the data that you've already purchased stored in a queryable map setting in data management. There's also a ton of really excellent documentation. I don't know if I'm sharing this right now, but I would encourage you to check out our documentation. There's award-winning, in fact, documentation on how to build and automate pipelines so that you can automate ordering, automate data ingest, and anything that's available and possible to do in the catalog and tasking is available to do via API and SDK. And so a lot of our big customers that purchase a lot of data have built more scalable ways of interacting with the Up42 platform, and we're really a developer-first platform. So I would encourage you to look into this if you have some software development domain knowledge and capabilities. There's, the sky's the limit in terms of what you can do here. And then if you're also curious about all of these data sets that I'm mentioning, there's a tremendous amount of sample data here as well. So you can download and view the data in QGIS or ArcGIS. 3D data, a ton of 3D data, SAR data, and optical data. And then there's sort of an overview of what your accounts, who's been spending money where and on what. And then more links to documentations and so on here. So let's get into the catalog part of the platform. So catalog, you have optical, SAR, and elevation. We've sort of put these in different sections, but let's just go through optical. I don't have all day, but you can of course upload geometry of your mine boundary, or you can also store geometry here as well, but you can also search is a mine that I used to do a little bit of work on in Canada as a GIS analyst. It's over here somewhere. And I wanted to, let's see if we can search, oh, I'm gonna delete that and, oh, sorry. Oh, that's okay. I can just draw a boundary here. We can search through the archive. So I might want to search for data from last year, let's say. So 2025, last summer, 50901. Sorry, my screen is also blocking me a little bit. So there's some Pleiad Neo imagery here. Let's see, you can preview it in the platform as well. It should show a preview, of course, during a demo. It's slower, but you can see the high resolution Pleiad Neo 15 that's been pan sharpened to 15 centimeters. It's available for purchase right in the platform. You can see, make sure there's no clouds over the critical parts of where you're ordering, and then you can draw a new boundary. Oops, let me try that again. Oh. Bear with me, please. So then it will give you an estimate of what, oh, I need to add it to the cart. Pleiad Neo 15, you can add to the cart, and then it'll give you an overview of the cost. You can add an order name, and then you can add tags. So let's say I'm a part of a mine closure group, and a hydrologist or something, and you might want to tag hydro, so that your group can always query for any data that's tagged with hydro. That would be what the catalog looks like. Of course, the same sort of rules apply to SAR and elevation. highly queryable. And like I said, this is all also possible via API to do at scale. Next, if data doesn't exist and we want to task some new data sets, this is where the tasking console comes into play. So these are all of the existing tasking orders. Apologies for the mess. There's lots of demo information in here. Let's say we want to create a new tasking order though. This is an Airbus presentation, so naturally I'll task Pleiad Neo and move myself out of the way. I need a mine site. I think I have one saved here. It happened to be the same mine site that Chloe was showing earlier in West Germany, a few hours west of where I am right now in Berlin. So let's say I want to collect some imagery here, Pleiad Neo imagery specifically. I can actually save a template too, which is really great because then you know that your team is ordering the same parameters over and over again. So you're getting consistency from the data set, and then it saves you a little bit of time in also setting up the order. Of course, there's a ton of information about all of these parameters and what they mean, because some of this information might not be super obvious. What's incidence angle, what's base height ratio for stereo imagery, orthorectified versus primary versus geo-rectified. This type of information is all explained really well in our documentation. And then you can set a date. So let's say I want to collect sometime between June 1st at 1:05 and August 1st. That's quite a wide window. So I imagine we don't need a feasibility study probably for this. I will create standard priority. Yeah, so it says it's feasible within the specified parameters. So that means we don't need a feasibility study. You don't need any manual intervention. This will go directly to the satellite. There's no human intervention needed, and it will start collecting data for you, and it will deliver automatically to your storage, and you'll be notified when an image shows up, which is really cool. Of course, you get a chance to review it and see what it costs and take a last look at your parameters before you order it. Sorry, quit that. And then, of course, if it does need a feasibility study, there is feasibility studies. Feasibility study might look like this. The provider might come back to you if you have a short window, or if it's in really difficult conditions climactically, like if you need less than 10% cloud cover and you're trying to collect imagery in the tropics, Airbus might come back to you and say, hey, we actually need more than a month to collect this because cloud cover is a problem. So that's what the feasibility study is for. So we usually will get a feasibility study, come back to you with that information and give you some options and sort of guide you on a path forward. Once you select that, there'll be a quotation that's ready. And then once the quotation is accepted, you'll see pay to activate order. You pay for it and the order starts collecting data immediately. And then once your order is being collected, you will see, let's see if I can find an order that's partially, oh, I see I'm in the, yeah, so this one, for example, you can see is 44% complete. So there's images that have been delivered. It's 44%, still waiting on the rest of this. This was collected in 2024. This is just a demo. Obviously, it's not still collecting data. That would be a long time. But this takes us directly into now what the data management side of it looks like. So this is where data would be stored. You can preview it, see what data sets already exist in your portfolio. And stream, you can create a link to stream the data directly into your ArcGIS environment. Yeah, that's most of it. Also, just to take a look at some other Pleiad Neo imagery here. This is the same mine site that Chloe was showing earlier. This is a Pleiad Neo imagery. That's about a scene size. It's quite huge. This is a low resolution or cloud native asset model preview. So yeah, this is where you can query across your entire accounts workspace to find data from various different sensors, different time acquisition dates, and then you can also search, of course, using geometry because we are a geospatial company. So that's the high level overview, a really quick demo of what the platform looks like. There's obviously a lot more to it than that. But those are the sort of, if you have never seen that 42 platform, that's sort of the spark notes, I guess you could say. So I will stop sharing my screen somehow. And go back to the slide. So now getting into some of these value add services, just want to check on the time. One thing that we've learned in our conversations with these big enterprise users is, and I think I touched on this briefly earlier, but allowing better control of their finances is really important, especially if you want to, share data across your organization. So you can, we have different legal entities sending purchase orders specifically, and they want only people or users within their entity to be able to access that purchase order. However, they want to be able to still share the data that they've purchased with other entities across their organization. So with that in mind, we need to have the ability to have budgets. And so that's what we have rolled out for our enterprise users so that they can manage their, Up42's expenditure the same way they would internally manage it. So this also was identified as something that was important for as like a preventative measure to stop people from spending too much money. Because if you have, especially in a post-payment setup, which we've rolled out, you don't want the ability to give the ability for users to spend unlimited money on your account. Well, maybe Up42 wants that, but you certainly as the customer do not want that to happen. With that in mind, there's also, enhanced access control and permissions. So you might have an owner who's sort of the administrator of your Up42 account who can add and remove and delete accounts, and they can set up budgets and create different owners with different abilities to view data only, which would be a viewer, which is actually, I think, a really cool role that we've created. So if you have someone who's new to your team and you don't want to give them the ability to spend money, but you want them to go in and look for what they have available, there's viewer all the way up to owner. And so there's a wide range of permissions and rights associated with each level. And then, of course, we're only as good as sort of what we allow people to innovate on top of. So I mentioned this earlier, our main customers do build a lot of, we're a developer first platform, I said that already, but they build a lot of automations directly on top of our API and our SDK. I would encourage you to check out the capabilities there. It's really well documented. It's easy to get started. And then WMTS streaming. So you can stream the RGB imagery directly from Up42. We'll host it for you into whether it's ArcMap or whether it's QGIS or into whatever your custom GIS environment might be. And then mentioning Esri here, but there's also a QGIS plugin as well. So yeah, there's lots of opportunity to optimize how you interact with the data that you've purchased. And then I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention, automations are great. And we've done so much work in the last few years and our product team is incredible at almost weekly releasing a new product feature update. But getting an image from a satellite down to a user, GIS analyst, or ultimately a decision maker who's making a decision based on the imagery and the data that we've collected is a complicated process with a lot of steps involved. And we have literally, thousands of hours across our team with unblocking issues that can go wrong and arise, making sure data makes it successfully, making sure that the customer makes the right decision too, and knows how to optimize geometry. It's easy to get lost in this process. And our team has done a really good job at facilitating that ordering workflow efficiently to ensure that, I think, the goal in customer success that I say all the time, but it's to become a trusted advisor. And I think with many of our big customers, we're a trusted advisor role with our customers to ensure that we're a big part of their data strategy, and we're happy to do that for customers. We're really well set up for that. So yeah, I think I wanted to just mention that briefly, that we're happy to have a chat about, data strategy and what suits you best to unblock access to data. So yeah, just to give an overview of what we just talked about, Up42, our main sort of selling point is that we are a centralized access to, industry leading remote sensing data. There's a ton of opportunity to build innovative, ways to improve and scale your data access and the way you ingest and interact with data from space or from aircraft or wherever it might come from through Up42. And then we have built, because we deal with really big tasking operations constantly, and we have orders coming from customers where they might be ordering 4,000 or 5,000 images in 30 minutes through an API. We can manage really big orders, and our project management for tasking is designed for that as well. And then because I think partially because we are a German-based company, we have very good data governance protocols in place. I think this is something that separates us from some of our competitors. Sometimes, in the satellite imagery world, end user license agreements, compliance are very important topics. You don't want to expose your company to risk there. And I think we have done a really good job at ensuring that we're not exposing our customers to breaching contracts with providers, and helping walking customers through that process. Like I just mentioned, our support's fantastic, and pricing is, of course, an important topic always. And we recognize that in untangling this complexity in the industry, large organizations especially sometimes already have existing contracts with many of our competitors / partners. So it's completely reasonable, and we have the option you can bring contracts from, let's say, Vantor, or maybe you already have a project or a contract with Airbus, for example. You can bring that to the platform, and we can align your usage on Up42 with what your existing commercial agreement might be. Oftentimes, in fact, our providers, whether it's Airbus or Vantor or a lot of our aero providers, actually would prefer that customers come through us and go directly to them, because we can kind of take on a lot of the administrative burden that they can face and streamline everything. So yeah, hopefully that resonated with people. That's all from me. Looking forward to the Q&A session.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your presentation. Thank you much, Chloe, also for your presentation. I see that we have received quite a lot of questions. I also have some questions of my own, so I hope we have time also to cover them. But let's start with the first one. There were two from Rafik. I think we can combine them. And Chloe, I think they're definitely for you. Are the satellite images from Spot and Triad free or paid? And do they cover a specific zone like France, or a whole continent like Africa and Europe?
Yes. So great. Brian just talked about pricing strategy, so maybe I'll let you take on that part of the question afterwards. But regarding coverage, so all our satellites are orbiting on sun synchronous orbits, which means that they pass over the whole world in one day. So they do not cover only a specific region. They can be tasked anywhere in the world. So yeah, and maybe I think pricing maybe more on your side.
Yeah, sure. I can try and speak to pricing. I would just say if maybe you mentioned this, but if you're looking for coverage of a whole country, like the Airbus base map is probably a good option for you, because it does cover global. It's global, I guess, Chloe, you would know better, but
Yes.
yeah. In terms of pricing of Spot and Pleiad, Spot, I mean, it's all relative, but I think Spot's very affordable, lower resolution. It's been around for a while. It's oh gosh, I can't remember the price per square kilometer. It's all on our website. I'll defer to you looking at the website for specific pricing. Pleiad, I know, is about, it depends on if it's mono or stereoscopic imagery. There's a lot of different variables that can impact the price, but the rough order of magnitude for pricing for Pleiad is like 26 euros per square kilometer would be about what it is. So minimum of 100 square kilometers. So you're looking at that's for tasking specifically. If you're looking at archive, so imagery that already exists, you can spend 10 euros on an image because there's fairly small order size requirements because it's off the shelf. Yeah, if you're just trying to get like a coverage of a shopping mall or something, it might be 10 euros or something like this. So yeah.
I'm very impressed, Brian, that you have the pricing on top of your.
Well, yeah, don't hold me to that too much, but yes, that's the rough order of magnitude, I would say. Yeah.
And Brian, I think the question from Alan came during your presentation, so I assume it is for you and for the UP42 platform. How does the data requirements and storage, so I think while you were demoing data management compared to, say, AI storage requirements? I'm not fully also sure how to interpret this question.
I'm not an AI expert whatsoever, but there's no uplift for storing data on the platform. So you can create an account and purchase data and we will store it for you. If you're buying a lot of data, that's kind of built into the cost of purchasing the data. Yeah, I will leave it at that. There's a bit more complexity to it. If you're purchasing a lot of data, there's different tiers of support and value add services that might pop up. But yeah, generally speaking, for small-ish, relatively speaking, data orders, we don't charge anything for data storage.
And Chloe, the next one is clearly for you. It's marked also for Airbus. Do you have restriction on data collection based on region and or data type and or data of clients doing the requests for mining? And what is the highest frequency of optical and SAR data collection for monitoring? So the tasking plans, basically.
Yes. So the frequency, the revisit for our satellites is intraday revisits. You've got daily revisits anywhere in the world, both for LEO and radar. And regarding tasking and conditions, tasking depends on the zone, obviously, because some zones will be. It will take a bit more time because the tasking plan is very heavy and there's a lot of demands. Usually mining sites are remote areas, so there is usually not a very heavy tasking plan on that area. So it's going to be quicker to get than an area that's more busy. I hope that answers the question.
And there was another question about exactly the credits. I think Brian kind of mentioned, but maybe to cover this again. So on the platform, 100 credits equal €1. So I think this answers the question with the specific credits in euro that was asked. Also, there was another one whether the service is free or paid. I think this one, Brian, is again for us, for the platform, which was also covered. So signing up for the platform is free. And of course, then purchasing the data. I'm not sure if there's anything you would like to add here. I think you covered it quite well in the previous question.
Yeah, it's absolutely free and it's pay as you go to start. Obviously, we have a ton of people on, I can't remember what the first plan is called. I should really know that. But the standard plan. And then as you move up into professional enterprise level, there is like a lot of value added services that come along with it. But yes, it's absolutely free to sign up and we can even allocate free credits. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying that, but there is free data available as well. So you can test platform for free and pay as you go to begin.
And there was a question about the wavelengths. I wasn't sure also whether, Chloe, that's specifically for Airbus or across the data providers on the UP42 platform. I see that Brian has already answered, but not sure, Chloe, if you would like to add something.
well, I think Brian's answered for the platform. Regarding Play and Neo, we've got, as I was saying, we've got near, we've got 8-bin panchromatic, and in spectral bins, Play and Neo goes through deep blue, blue, green, red edge, near infrared. So hope that answers the question.
Yes. And yeah, Brian, I see that you already provided an answer here. Feel free to chime in if there's anything else you want to add.
No, I just added the answer there. Yeah, we have many options for bands. Yeah.
And we also received one question, which maybe for both of you, Chloe, starting with you. So for mining, are there any examples used that use both SAR and optic imagery in terms of used methodology and apps? So maybe business applications or geospatial apps, GIS softwares, could be both.
Yes, so I've got actually a recent example. I've not showed it this time, but we've done a use case on the Kiruna map, on the Kiruna mine, sorry, where we've produced interferometric maps for the displacement of the ground, and then we've used optical imagery as well to monitor them. So they're moving the city because of displacement of the ground. So we've used optical data imagery to follow the infrastructure construction and deconstruction, I guess. So that can be an example. Then maybe you have examples in mind as well. But yeah, it can be good to combine both in specific areas.
Brian, anything from your perspective that you see from our customers?
I don't have any specific examples for this one. I would leave that to the experts. We're mostly like at F42, we supply data, raw data to experts, and they create the insights with it. So yeah, I'm sure there's many people on the call that have very interesting examples of how they can use SAR and optical imagery for mining insights, but I will leave that to the experts.
And Chloe, I'm actually very happy that there is time maybe for one more question from my side. Like, you covered quite a lot of interesting use cases across the whole mining lifecycle, but I was specifically interested in reforestation. So, in using the data for regulatory purposes, reporting for reforestation. If there is something else you want to add, I think also quite an important topic nowadays, and also quite a nice maybe question to end the webinar today.
Yes, of course. So indeed, we do a lot of monitoring of reforestation. So we've got also a lot of expertise in the last decade with Starling, which is a program we have. You talked about regulation. It's to help monitor the supply chains and deforestation regarding to European compliances. So we've got a lot of experience in that, and this knowledge and those products that are made with change detection can be applied to monitoring reforestation after the decommission of a mining site, for example. And so the way that it works is that we use imagery that goes from a lot of different resolutions. It can be Play and Neo imagery, it can be spot imagery, can be radar as well to monitor the area. Obviously, the best for that is optical imagery because we monitor forest cover change, and then we apply change detection algorithms that identify the change in forest cover and the evolution throughout time. So it's quite visual, and it allows also to answer regulations in terms of reforestation and to have like a very easy way to monitor remote areas as well.
That's very insightful. Thank you so much. When I think with that, I would like to thank both of you for fantastic presentations. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chloe. Also, everyone that joined us today. Thank you so much for for joining us, for staying until the end, for the questions that you asked. As mentioned at the beginning, we will share the webinar recording. There were a couple of people that asked. Give us a couple of business days. We'll follow up as soon as possible. And also, one more thing I wanted to mention is that we all plan to have another webinar with our partner Airbus, really that will deep dive in elevation data. Chloe mentioned a little bit, but as she said to me, there is a lot more to cover. So yeah, we're looking probably into later this year hosting another one. So stay tuned for this one as well. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. And yeah, hopefully see you all soon.
Thank you.